Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about Astrologian. As with other videos, feel free to use the YouTube chapters or the description to skip ahead if you want to just see the final setup, or if you're just interested in the targeting commentary. But first, let's go over some terminology very quickly. Feel free to skip to the next section if you've seen this in another video. I call this the primary cross hotbar. For me, this is set 1. Above is the double cross hotbar. I have this on set 3, and you can configure this in character configuration, hotbar settings in both the cross and custom section. You access this by double tapping. I do have the expanded enabled. This is by using both L2 and R2, or R2 and L2. I have this set to set 2, and this is customizable in character configuration as well. If you would like to learn more about this, I do have a video specifically on my customization settings, and there should be a card that pops up right now for you to click on if you wish to see it. Other terminology I will be using: a GCD is an action that activates the global cooldown. The game typically calls these spells or weapon skills, though there are a few exceptions. Actions that do not activate the global cooldown are called abilities, once again with a few exceptions. They are also called OGCDs, which means off the global cooldown. Benefic. I like for my GCDs to be on the action buttons. I favor the right side and thus prefer to save that for more frequent actions. Single target GCD healing, especially one without a region such as Benefic, belongs on the left side. Helios. AoE GCD heals go on the expanded. They don't need to be seen and you don't need to target, so the extra hand movement from going to the expanded is balanced out. Ascend and Swiftcast. All healers will have their Resurrection and Swiftcast on the double cross hotbar on the left side. Keeping them together makes logical sense, but we also need to be able to see Swiftcast cooldown at all times, hence the double cross hotbar. However, we don't want it on the right side because you hopefully won't be using this too often. Benefic II. Benefic II is the stronger single target GCD heal. It goes opposite Benefic. Expected Benefic. Expected Benefic heals over time and it's instant, which means you can move more freely and use abilities right away. So it will go on the right side. It will go on the bottom because the other spots are reserved, and also it matches up where I normally put the single target region for all healers. Expected Helios. This is an AoE region. It is a GCD, so it will go on the expanded. Combust and Fall Malefic. Our damage attacks will go on the right side of the primary to match the other healers, and because this is my favorite side. Gravity. For AoE damage, I usually like to put those on the expanded, however for healers, it just makes more sense for it to go on the left side on the primary. This is for two reasons. 1. The expanded is used for AoE healing and other occasional actions that are specific to healers, and 2. Dungeon healing often means going from your AoE attack to a healing your GCD, many of which will be on the primary, so this will go on the left side. Macrocosmos. Our last job GCD is both a heal and damage. In the end, I chose the double cross hotbar on the right side on the action button. This still keeps it very accessible to keep that GCD rolling, while also keeping the cooldown very visible. It also matches up with Sage's Pneuma, which is also a GCD that does both healing and damage. Do note, however, that Macrocosmos is a two-part action, and its second part is an ability and not a GCD. Before we move on to abilities, let's finish up role and general actions. In general, there is Limit Break. I placed this in the same spot for all of my jobs on the left side on the double cross hotbar. This is what I consider to be one of the most inaccessible spots to hopefully reduce accidental usage. Repose might be a GCD technically, but it's only used for very specific circumstances. As such, it doesn't deserve to follow my GCD rules, and will go on the expanded on the D-pad because I don't really need to see it, and the action slots can be used for more important actions. Asuna. I used to have Asuna on the left side of the double cross hotbar. Then I was progging Alexander Ultimate and realized it was not great in content where multiple people needed to be Asuna'd in a row, so now it's on the expanded. It's fine on the D-pad since you have to target a party member anyway. Lucid Dreaming. This is a resource ability. Since it gives MP, I like to put resource abilities on the double cross hotbar on the top and bottom. This one goes on the bottom. Swiftcast was already talked about with Resurrection, so we can skip it. Surecast goes on the right double cross hotbar on the D-pad. This ensures you can see the cooldown, have strong muscle access to it because it's on the right side, and my build once again favors the right, but still try to prevent accidents by placing it on the D-pad. Rescue can be a powerful tool, but it has very limited use due to its long cooldown. It can also be really inconvenient if it's used by accident, so I definitely want it on the double cross hotbar on the left side on the D-pad, just like Limit Break. Back to the job actions, let's move on to abilities. Lightspeed. This allows actions to reduce their cast time enough to turn casts into instants, with the exception of Ascend. While Lightspeed itself is not a mobility action, it will go into the spot I normally reserve for them since it helps create mobility actions. This is on the action left, or square, button. For some jobs I do this on the primary, while others have it on the expanded. In Astrologian's case, we will have the freedom to add it to both. Essential Dignity. This is an instant heal. It will go in the same spot as Color's Lustrate and Sage's Drurocool. Draw. This is used fairly frequently, and you'll be using it often after a Malefic or Gravity in dungeons. As such, it's important to keep it easily accessible, even if you're moving. That's why I put it on the double cross hotbar on the action button side. It's even the same button as Malefic and Gravity. Undraw. This can be useful when you need it, but it definitely doesn't deserve to be on the primary, and it has no cooldown to keep track of, so it doesn't need to be on the double cross hotbar either. It's well suited on the expanded D-pad along with other actions that are not used often. What's special about Undraw, however, is that technically speaking, it's more efficient as a macro than as an ability. If you use Undraw normally, it is an ability, which means it will use up the animation log of an ability. Spells like Malefic and Benefic only leave enough time to weave one ability, and thus you might not want to waste that on an Undraw. However, when you draw a card, it gives you a status. When you undraw, all it does is remove the status. You can use the status off macro to achieve the same thing, just as long as you remember to include all of the cards. Please note that if you are not playing English, you will need to figure out the status name by using your HUD select button. For those on PS4 or PS5, this would be the touchpad click-in. For players on PC and an Xbox controller, that would be your back button, more than likely. The benefit to using a status soft macro is that it does not use animation logs. It activates right away while you're casting and does not wait. That's why macros like these are actually more efficient in comparison to action macros, which are not. Play. Once you do have a card, you need to put it into play. Since you're going to be doing finger movements to target, we don't want to add any more unnecessary finger movements, so this needs to be on the primary and on the D-pad since your fingers will be there from targeting anyway. Redraw. Just like I wanted draw to be easily accessible, I also want redraw to be accessible too, so I want it on an action button. But still, you may not need to use it often, depending on your luck, so it can go on the left side of the double cross hotbar. Sinistry. This is a unique Astrologian healing action with a long cooldown. It will go on the primary like most of the single target healing actions, and it will go on the D-pad's bottom because its long cooldown means it doesn't need a more accessible spot. Divination. This is a party damage buff. I have a spot for those that I use for many jobs on the double cross hotbar on the right side. Astrodyne. This particular action has a very short cooldown of 1 second, so from a cooldown perspective it can go in any bar, but it's really more about your gauge, which you should be able to see at all times. You do get to see the action light up once the gauge is full, so it might be nice to have it on the primary or the double cross hotbar, but it's definitely a low priority, so it shall go on the left double cross hotbar. Collective Unconscious. This is a party mitigation. I like for party mitigation to be on the double cross hotbar on the right side. Celestial Opposition. This is an AoE regen ability. Since it is an ability with no shared resource, it can still be used for single target healing and thus belongs on the primary and not the expanded. It will go on the left side under gravity as a reminder that of course it's better to use this for AoE healing in content where that would make sense, but that yes, you can use this for healing your tank in dungeon pulls too. We're going to skip Earthly Star for now. Minor Arcana. Minor Arcana is like a special draw, but less often. Once activated, it will turn into either a lord or a lady. At that point, it would be better suited on the primary. So we're going to add it to the primary's left side. If it's a lady, it's on the same button as Essential Dignity. However, that doesn't make it quite as visible as it needs to be. Since draw is used fairly frequently, every 30 seconds roughly, a lot of time is spent looking at the right side. Because of this, it's also a good idea to put Minor Arcana on the double crossbar's right side. It will go on the D-pad on the top. Yes, for other healers there is an AoE heal or shield, whichever there, but for Astrologian, it really does make more sense for Minor Arcana to be here. Celestial Intersection. This is a single target barrier. It will go on the D-pad, right button. This is the same spot as Sage's Taracle on the same cooldown time. While we're at it, let's skip ahead to Exaltation. This is also a single target barrier and also belongs on the D-pad right button, just like Celestial Intersection, but this will go on the left side. This should make it pretty easy to remember where the single target barriers are for Astrologian. You could switch sides before them if you want, but it makes sense from a flow perspective to have this, since that will keep all of the healers with a 60-second cooldown on this spot. Earthly Star. We're going to skip over Horoscope. Let's circle back to Earthly Star, which I had also skipped before. Earthly Star is ground targeted, and so it would seem it should go up on the double cross hotbar like I do for Scholar and also White Mage's targeted actions. However, Earthly Star has a part 2, the detonation, which is just a regular OGCD. That means the detonation can be weaved, and thus it is more efficient to not macro it. I would highly recommend, if you are a person who wishes to use a macro, to also have a non-macro version. So, the non-macro version of Earthly Star shall go on the primary on the D-pad, to be like Scholar's Indom. However, if you do want a macro version, you can put that on the expanded, like I have for Scholar. It's common to use either a me macro to place it on yourself, or a target macro to place it on the tank or the boss. And since there is a non-macro version on the primary, that's why it's perfectly fine for Minor Arcana to take up what would have been its spot on the double cross hotbar. Horoscope. This is also used for AoE healing, so it will get the same button as Earthly Star, but on the primary's left side. Neutral Sect. This is a big healing buff and also has shields to expected heals. While Neutral Sect itself is not a party mitigation, it can be used to then do a big party mitigation, so it should go on the double cross hotbar. And besides, I want to keep track of that cooldown. But because of the way things are laid out, there are no spots left, and so it needs to go on the left side. General. Sprint doesn't go on any cross hotbars, at least not for my setup. Instead, you can set the right click in, also known as R3, to do a macro and place it there. General actions do not have action queuing, so there is no queuing loss from using a macro. You can place it on a regular hotbar if you want to see the cooldown. This is the only action I have on a regular hotbar for visibility purposes. The last 2 spots up top are for your elixirs and ethers, or whatever other consumables you wish to have. And that's it! This is the final setup. The card actions have moved a bit from what I had last expansion, but they fit better with the changes that have been made. So, you know, that means when Square Enix changes Astrologian yet again, this will more than likely move around again. Because Astrologian's cards are always being changed. And with all that, I must now say goodbye and go work on the video for White Mage. Check out the targeting video guide if you want more information on controller targeting. See you next time. Bye bye.